Welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel, your encyclopedia for the college basketball season. The first round is over. The most exciting days of the year have concluded. We're going to talk about all of the round one results and our takeaways. It's been fairly chalky. Hopefully, you're good at picking the 50-50 games. I sure am not. We're going to talk about some of the bracket busters, some of the most surprising results. Not really too crazy. There's one that we'll talk about a little bit in depth, but other than that, most of the favorites took care of business or, maybe a couple point underdogs. But other than that, it's been pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about some of the conference breakdowns, the conference records for all the multi-bid leagues. And then we are going to preview the round of 32 with the updated bracket. And then, of course, talk about the betting lines and the TV schedule on a separate graphic other than the main bracket graphics. So we'll talk about, your games to watch and the betting lines as it stands, maybe throw in a few takes, although the takes have been just horrible. When it's we do a little bit of best bets on the last show and you go about 50% on that, those are the best bets. Oh, it's not great. Hopefully not a ton of people tailed, but if you did, it probably broke right about even. So not too great there. Not the best 50-50 game picker this year, but we're going to dive into some fun stuff. It was, of course, always entertaining. As you can see on this graphic, we got some of the notable teams that took losses in the first round. All right, without further ado, let's go back to Thursday and talk about these. Now, these are broken down just region by region. We'll talk about it if it was important. I mean, all of them are important, but if it was maybe a little more surprising than others. Starting in the South region, so this is broken down by just, your top left quadrant where Auburn's the 1 seed, top right quadrant, the East region where Duke, bottom right quadrant where Houston is the 1 seed, and the West region, bottom left, where Florida's the 1 seed. So these graphics will be broken down by that. So on Thursday, Auburn took care of Alabama State after, a little bit of a scare early in the first half, but Auburn came out firing in the second half, took them down. Louisville did lose to Creighton, 89-75. Jemiah Neal, that was the name to know. I posted on our Instagram that Jemiah Neal may be the player I have seen progress more throughout a season than anyone I've seen. I mean, he has gotten so much better. I talked to a few Creighton fans at the Players Era Festival. They were a little skeptical of Jemiah Neal, and he has just taken off. He's been absolutely awesome. He's a big reason that this Creighton team, finished second in the Big East regular season standings, made the championship game in the Big East tournament, now dominated Louisville in round one. Louisville, tough draw, probably should have been a 5 seed, 5 or 6 seed. Creighton also, believe it or not, a tough draw. They should have been an 8 seed, and they ended up a 9 seed and had to basically play a road game. But they took care of business. This team's really disciplined. Ryan Kalkbrenner and Stephen Ashworth, great as always. So Creighton takes down Louisville. This was the opening game. So if you had Louisville, unfortunate to start with a win, with an underdog win. It is with Creighton was about a 2.5 point underdog. Texas A&M did take care of Yale, 82-71. Never was really close. Texas A&M got off to a great start, just kind of held that lead, ended up taking them down. Michigan took down UC San Diego in what is probably the most entertaining game of the entire first round, 68-65. That was the late night game on Thursday. Michigan got off to a blazing start, and then UC San Diego looked like the better team most of the game. They had a lead late, and then Michigan eventually just a little bit too much down the stretch. UC San Diego had a 3 at the end of the game that looked like it was going to be just dead center. It hit the back of the iron, and Michigan and Dusty May escapes. Dusty May wins his first game for Michigan. Let's move over to the East region where Wisconsin had no problems with Montana. Montana, honestly, yeah, it was a pretty ugly game. Wisconsin just so much better than Montana. Not much to talk about there. BYU did take down VCU. Pretty much domination here. Kevin Young gets his first win for BYU. They are still blazing hot. I know they got drilled by Houston, but that's Houston. Houston's a different breed. BYU playing really good. This will set up a matchup with Wisconsin. We should have mentioned that, as you can see, I got the bracket lines on this graphic. So Creighton will match up with Auburn, and Michigan will match up with Texas A&M. So Wisconsin will match up with BYU. A whole lot of chalk to start, and it's going to continue to be this way. Now let's go down to the Midwest region where Houston just annihilated SIUE. I mean, it was just domination. Houston right now, them or Duke look like the best team in the country. I mean, Florida and Auburn are right there. Florida's probably been the best team in the country as of late. In the first round, to me, Houston and Duke just looked like, oh my goodness, these teams are so good. Gonzaga got off to a 27-3 start over Georgia in the Midwest in the 8-9 game. That's why Gonzaga should not be an 8 seed. You got to lean to the predictive metrics a little bit. Georgia, just no match. Thought they might, maybe be able to, with Georgia's physicality, maybe put up a little bit of a fight. They did not. It was just domination from the get-go for Gonzaga to match up with Houston in the round of 32 in a top 10 KenPom matchup. Yes, I said Houston looks like maybe the best team in the country right now. Now you got to face a top 10 team. That's a horrible job by the committee, having to match up Gonzaga with Houston in the second round, although it will add to a very fun second round game. Purdue took down High Point, really had no problems, just kind of controlled the entire game. So we did not see a 13-4 upset in this one. The most surprising game to me of the entire first round was Clemson losing to McNeese. I don't even think this is a hot take. I think this is just kind of known. Clemson scores 13 points in the first half, a complete no-show by Clemson. I mean, they had, and it's not like they, like McNeese, let's first give credit to them. They looked good. They looked athletic. They came out just firing on all cylinders. They were electric defensively. Will Wade from McNeese, the coach, is going to NC State, and he got a bunch of questions like, how is this going to affect your team? In today's age, it's not going to affect them because you know what these guys are thinking at McNeese? Great, I get to go play in the ACC next year. They're probably going to go with Will Wade, or else, if they're seniors, they're graduating, this is their last dance. It didn't affect them whatsoever. They were the much better team. The game, it ended up being a 2-point game, but I mean, it was a blowout most of the way. McNeese looked really good. Clemson just looked so flat, and I mean so flat. It's not like they didn't have open shots at points too. It just, they couldn't make them. Chase Hunter started to play better in the second half. Just not enough. McNeese, much better team in this scenario, 69-67. So they will match up with Purdue in a fun little 4-12 matchup in the second round. Tennessee had no problems with Wofford. Game was a little closer than I expected, but Tennessee ended up getting the job done. And then one of the more surprising results, UCLA just annihilated Utah State 72-47. Not even a contest from the start. It was just a blowout all the way, 25-point victory. Good stuff. Mick Cronin had his team ready. Now moving over to the last region on Thursday, the West region, Texas Tech was in a battle with UNC Wilmington at about, I mean, if you fell asleep and woke up at 12:30 in the morning and checked your phone, you're like, what is going on? UNC Wilmington had a late lead. I believe they took a lead, I think, at one point, had maybe a 1-point lead over Texas Tech late, but Texas Tech did end up coming back and escaping. UNC Wilmington's a good program. They got a ton of talent. They were probably the most talented 14 seed, but Texas Tech does escape. Drake and Ben McCollum, this team's just awesome. They take down Missouri 67-57. It was a bad matchup for Drake in this game, which is why a lot of people were leaning Missouri, because Drake won 30 games. They were awesome, but Missouri just had so much athleticism. It didn't matter. Drake is just so well coached. Ben McCollum, just a tremendous job. I mean, if they were to make, I know CBS, at least CBS Sports, does their coach of the year after the Final Four. So if they were to make a run to even the Elite Eight, you in say Auburn, Florida doesn't make, or the one seeds don't end up, in the national championship game, which it's kind of leaning towards they were. There's a case for Ben McCollum to be the coach of the year in his first year. I mean, they have 4 starters that played Division II basketball last year, and they just went in, controlled the entire game against Missouri. Now they got Bennett Sturtz, who I believe is going to be in the NBA. He's awesome. Just controlled this game. They had Missouri play to their style of basketball. This team's just awesome. So well coached. They're my favorite mid-major, quite frankly, this entire season. That story's just so cool. Division II, straight up here, and they've already won 31 games. That's awesome. Preseason number 1, 7-seeded Kansas got beat by 10-seeded Arkansas, 79-72. What a disappointing year for Kansas. Arkansas just came out and looked like the better team, quite frankly. I know Kansas had a lead late in the game, but shout out to Arkansas and John Calipari. I know some people might say, Arkansas, and probably including myself for a while in these podcasts, Arkansas was 15th in the preseason AP poll, I believe, something around that number. And they dropped to looking like they were going to be outside of the tournament, 0-5 to start SEC play. So you're seeing it as a disappointment. Now they've won a game in March Madness, completely turned around their season. John Calipari. So it's like, do you say John Calipari's done a great job? Do you say, he's done a normal job? Because if you'd have told me in the preseason that they were going to make the round of 32, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. But with what has happened and all the the obstacles they've had to face, some injuries, this game was played without Adou Thiero. It just came out for the game today that Adou Thiero is not going to play. So he's done a great job. Arkansas looked like the better team in this game by far. It was a Jonas Aidoo legacy game. Jonas Aidoo had Hunter Dickinson on him and just torched him. You wouldn't have never have expected this. Jonas Aidoo looked bad to start the year. In all honesty, he looked bad to start the year, and he came out and just went off. He was making mid-range shots, almost 3-point shots. He just torched Hunter Dickinson down low. The Hunter Dickinson, Dajuan Harris, KJ Adams. KJ Adams unfortunately left with an Achilles injury, so not to say it doesn't matter, but they're done. So their careers are over. I think Kansas fans are ready to move on. It's been raising a lot of questions about, was Hunter Dickinson the complete issue? He's a great player. Don't get me wrong. He's a stat sheet stuffer, but just that Kansas brand, what Bill Self has built, just gritty, just great players. People are saying, I mean, there's an argument to be made. I get it. I still think Hunter Dickinson's good. He's not, I don't think he's going to play in the NBA. I don't think that's a hot take, but yeah, I don't know. Very disappointing the past 2 years, preseason number one, and losing the first round this year, second round last year. I've been seeing people saying maybe it's time for Bill Self to move on. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There was like 20 years in a row where think about what Houston is right now, as dominant as they have been in the Big 12 for 2 years, which seems incredibly impressive. Imagine Kansas and Bill Self. They did that for like 20 years. That's ridiculous to say Bill Self needs to move on. As quite frankly, as honest as I can be, once Hunter Dickinson, Dajuan Harris, and KJ Adams move on, I think Kansas is going to get back in shape. They kind of built their roster. Sorry to go long about this game. It was just the most notable game of probably the first round, Calipari versus Kansas, versus Bill Self in Kansas. It almost just seems like they built their roster around Hunter Dickinson like he was Zach Edey and like he was that good, who you didn't really need anyone around him, and he's just not that good. He's not Zach Edey good. So that's kind of where just the roster construction struggled a little bit. But shout out to Arkansas. They did get back Boogie Fland in this game. He looked good. He is so fast. He's going to be so good in the NBA. I'm excited to see Boogie Fland. They didn't even need Zvonimir Visic. That's what I thought was going to be the matchup issue for Kansas in this game, was Zvonimir Visic dragging out Hunter Dickinson to the three. Instead, Jonas Aidoo just had an absolute career game and just torched Hunter Dickinson down low. Fun stuff. We will have a John Calipari versus Rick Pitino second round matchup. How fun is that? So speaking of Rick Pitino, they took down Omaha 83-53. Just domination after actually a sluggish start. Omaha got off to an early lead, but St. John's just too good. They found it on the offensive end. So Rick Pitino versus John Calipari, of course, we'll talk about that here a little bit more. Let's move on to Friday, yesterday's games. In the South region, Iowa State had no problems with Lipscomb. This was the most popular 14-3 upset. Iowa State's just too well coached and has too good of players, quite frankly, for Lipscomb. Just domination there. Ole Miss takes down North Carolina 71-64. Obviously, North Carolina took down San Diego State in the first 4 games. We're not really going to talk about those games too much because both of the teams lost in the we did not see a first 4 team advance, which we have been seeing as of late, but it was a chalky one. Ole Miss got off to a blazing start. They were up 22 at one point in the second half. North Carolina, disappointing season. Ole Miss takes them down. Chris Beard, good stuff there. Michigan State torched Bryant 87-62. No surprise there. New Mexico did take down Marquette 75-66 in a 10-7 upset. Donovan Dent, awesome. Nelly Jr. Joseph, awesome. Tough little fall off here for Marquette the past couple of weeks. This team was up in the top 10 of the AP poll for a while. Just a little bit of a disappointing finish for Marquette fans. Moving over to the East region, Duke had no problems with Mount St. Mary's. Cooper Flagg did play. Duke looks as good as anyone in the country right now. No surprise there. Mississippi State loses to Baylor in just the first game of the day. This was one of the games I had as a best bet. Mississippi State, money line over Baylor. I stand by it. The matchup was so good for Mississippi State. Just something about this team cannot win. They cannot win in March Madness. Last year against Michigan State in the 8-9 game, just got drilled. This year against Baylor, Baylor team that has been hurt. They lost their center for the season. Their starting center right now is Norchad Omier, who's labeled as 6'7", but they said on the broadcast he's like 6'5" or 6'6". And Mississippi State just got completely outplayed, and it's not like Baylor shot the lights out. they're not a tournament team. Every single year we see the same thing with Mississippi State. I know I'm probably a little too angry in this one because there's no reason. I mean, Baylor has been, I love Baylor. I love Scott Drew, but they've struggled this year. They were 19-14 coming in. They lost their starting center. They don't have a lot of size. It's Rob Wright is awesome. VJ Edgecombe's obviously awesome. And Norchad Omier is awesome. It was a perfect matchup for Mississippi State. They're huge. They defend. They out physical their teams. They should have done it against Baylor, just got outcoached, outplayed. Mississippi State, don't ever let me take them again in the first round. I don't care if they're a 1 seed. This team does not win in March Madness. So disappointing. I feel for the Mississippi State fans over there. They're just a mediocre SEC brand. Not brand, sorry, Mississippi State fans. Mediocre SEC basketball team. Didn't mean to say brand, but it's frustrating. I feel for the fans over there. That's got to be frustrating. I mean, at one point, sorry, I'm going long. I'm on this tangent about Mississippi State. At one point in the season, like when we were just started doing the bracketology for the year, they were like a 3 seed in one of our first bracketologies. They started off so hot. They looked like a team who's like, wow, this could be a national championship team. They got worse throughout the year. And it's kind of what we're getting to see every single year with Mississippi State. I think Chris Jans is a good coach, but is it that fun just being a mediocre SEC team? I don't know. That was a tough one, but good for Scott Drew and just, out coaching, getting his team to just play. This Baylor team is not an elite Baylor team, but they won a game in March. Good stuff for Baylor. I'm happy for Scott Drew. He's awesome. Arizona just destroyed Akron. I thought Akron was going to show up a little more, and as soon as you turn on the TV, it's 9-0 Arizona. It was a blowout the entire way. Arizona just way too much for Akron to handle, as was Oregon for Liberty. Oregon just destroyed Liberty in this game, 81-52. Not a 12-5 upset. That was not a popular pick as a 12-5 upset just because Liberty is tiny. Great program, just not enough for Oregon. Alabama struggled with Robert Morris for a while. Robert Morris had a lead late. It got a little bit scary in there. Alabama ended up picking up a win, 90-81. Robert Morris, good showing for Bobby Moe there. Alabama will move on to the round of 32. Another interesting one. St. Mary's takes down Vanderbilt 59-56. St. Mary's trailed by 12 in the second half, came back to win. As soon as I saw they were down 12, I'm like, really? Not again for St. Mary's. Every year I say, this team is good. This team is good. Like this year's team is good. They have size. They got players. And then funny enough, Augustus Marcelonis, who I believe was the WCC player of the year, he got into foul trouble. He went to the bench and St. Mary's went on a crazy run. So they were able to keep him out. And then he came back in and then did make a big impact. And St. Mary's ended up kind of, getting ahead by 2 possessions late and then did not end up covering. The line was 3.5, only ended up winning by 3. But St. Mary's will move on to the second round. I'm happy for that fan base. So St. Mary's really struggled with Vanderbilt. Alabama really struggled with Robert Morris. That might set up an interesting next round there. In the Midwest, Kentucky just dominated Troy. Mark Pope picks up his first win in the NCAA tournament. Good stuff. I like this. I really enjoyed watching Mark Pope just kind of put together this roster this year, and it's good to see it come together with a win here in March Madness. So good on Mark Pope in there. He's got a tremendous future ahead. Imagine if they didn't have these injuries. If they were a 2 seed, they would have been a really popular pick to make the Final Four. That's a good team. I'm excited for that one. Illinois took down Xavier 86-73. So the other first 4 teams, Xavier took down Texas, who did fire Rodney Terry, by the way. Thank God it needed to happen. Choking that game in the first 4. They needed to go in another direction. But Illinois does take down Xavier, setting up a Kentucky-Illinois game. What in the world is that game going to have coming towards us? Because I mean, these 2 teams have been as up and down as anyone in the country. So kind of a fun matchup there in the second round. Florida had no problems with Norfolk State. No surprise, 95-69. UConn did take down Oklahoma. No surprise, 67-59, setting up UConn and Florida, the past 2, the 2 most recent, I guess I should say, back-to-back champions, Florida in 06-07, UConn the previous 2 years, and then Maryland. My goodness, what a showing against Grand Canyon. 81-49, just complete annihilation. I thought Grand Canyon would show up a little more. I did say that I didn't think there was going to be a 4/13 this year, which I guess actually hit, but the worst take was that I said if there was one, I would see it being Grand Canyon over Maryland. My goodness, not even close. 32-point victory. It was just domination from the start. Maryland just that if you were to tell me Maryland's in the national championship game in a couple weeks, I would not be surprised. This team's so good, the Crab Five. And then Memphis did lose to Colorado State, 78-70. Memphis was without Tyrese Hunter. Still, Memphis just has not broken through with Penny Hardaway. They had a good year. They're a 5 seed. They obviously had a good year, but Memphis fans got to be frustrated. This is a top 20 roster in college basketball. Dane Dainja, PJ Haggerty. I know Tyrese Hunter went down, but this team was really good. Colorado State is just blazing hot right now, and I mean blazing hot. They'll match up with Maryland, who's also playing some really good basketball. So that's going to be a really intriguing 4-12 second round matchup as well. All right, so that is everything that happened in the round of 64. Now let's just talk about the conference records throughout the first round. This is just the multi-bid leagues. This does include the first 4. So the Big Ten, how about that? 8-0 to start. How about that? Good stuff for the Big Ten. The SEC is 8-6, so still pretty solid there. The Big 12, 6-1, off to a good start. What's the only loss in the Big 12? Kansas. How about that? Who's been the powerhouse in the conference for 20 years? It is now Houston. Houston is now the powerhouse. Big East went 4-2, pretty good showing there. The WCC 2-0, not too bad. Mountain West 2-2, not too bad. In the ACC 2-3, the only conference sub 500 with Louisville, Clemson, and North Carolina all losing. Duke, that's what we've been saying all year. It's Duke, and then it's the rest in the ACC. But all pretty solid records here. Just shows the chalk. We didn't have any, real incredible mid-majors make some or pick up some big wins other than, Drake and McNeese in that scenario. So let's pull up the now official bracket and let's talk about the second round matchups real quick, and then we'll dive into the TV schedule, which we'll break these down. This is just basically for visual purposes. So in the top left, the South region, Auburn will take on Creighton, Michigan will take on Texas A&M, Ole Miss versus Iowa State, New Mexico versus Michigan State. Pretty clean bracket over there, 9 seed, 10 seed, everything else chalky. Good stuff there. Moving across to the East, Duke will play Baylor. Before we keep going, let's just talk about these coaching matchups and these brand matchups. We have some of the biggest brands still available. I mean, just about every big brand is still here other than, honestly, probably Kansas. So some of the biggest brands still here. This is probably the best round of 32 matchups I can remember in a long time. Duke, Baylor feels like a national championship game if you'd have told me this at the beginning of the year, or Final Four game. But Baylor obviously just struggled a little bit this year, but still making the round of 32. Oregon versus Arizona in an old Pac-12 matchup. How fun is that? BYU, Wisconsin, which I already have lost sleep over in this game. Both teams I wish didn't have to match up with each other in the second round. That's going to be a fun game. St. Mary's and Bama, we talked about that one a little bit. Houston and Gonzaga, which is probably the best matchup here. 2 top 10 teams at KenPom. McNeese versus Purdue. Can McNeese magic continue? Illinois versus Kentucky, as we mentioned, the 2 just up and down teams. UCLA versus Tennessee. Very, very good defensive matchup in that one. Could see a real low-scoring game. Then moving to the West, Florida, UConn, as mentioned, the back-to-back champions versus the team who was back-to-back in the 2000s. Colorado State versus Maryland, 2 of the hottest teams in the country. And then the Drake story versus Texas Tech, which we'll talk about that one here in a second because the coach has got a good relationship there. And then Rick Pitino versus John Calipari, Arkansas versus St. John's. How fun is this round of 32 going to be? The most exciting one I can remember in a very long time. All right, now let's move on to day by day, the games to watch, broken down by region. So starting today on Saturday, it's about 10 o'clock, so games will be starting here in just over 2 hours. Let's not go in, I guess we'll talk about it sort of in time order, but starting just region by region. In the South region, Michigan versus Texas A&M, as mentioned. Texas A&M is favored by 2.5 in this game. I think I like Michigan to win this game. It's an interesting matchup because Texas A&M is so fast and offensive rebounds the crap out of the ball because they're so athletic, but Michigan is huge with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. It's a fun matchup. This is a really good matchup. I think it's 50-50, so I'd probably lean Michigan plus 2.5 just with this one. But that game's at 5:15 on CBS, at 7:10 on TBS. So both games in this region, the top of the South region, will be going on at the same time, most likely, unless that Michigan Texas A&M game miraculously has no reviews and ends up a quick one. 9-seeded Creighton taking on 1-seeded Auburn. Auburn's favored by 8.5. Kalkbrenner versus Janai Broom. We talked about this in our preview podcast. Is going to be a very fun matchup. I think I probably preseason, other than Cooper Flagg, probably would have taken Ryan Kalkbrenner to be the player of the year, and it ended up being Janai Broom. So that is a tremendous matchup there. Auburn defends the 3 really well. We saw it against Alabama in the first game. They're going to have to guard Ashworth. You got to guard Ashworth from 25, 30 feet. Denver Jones can do it. Jemiah Neal has been awesome. It's going to be tough to get past this Auburn defense. I like Auburn to win the game. 8.5 feels like a lot of points. I'd probably take Creighton inside that number just because Auburn's they've been looking a little vulnerable, but I think we're all just kind of waiting on them to just flip a switch. But will they lose before they can just flip that switch and go on a tear? We'll see. In the East, at 7:45 on CBS, this is the only game in the East. As mentioned, 6-seeded BYU and 3-seeded Wisconsin. Wisconsin favored by 1.5 in this game. I have zero clue who to take in this game. BYU has been awesome. They're on fire. Wisconsin has been great all season long. No idea. Pick your poison. That's going to be just a fun matchup to watch. In the Midwest, the first game of the day at 12:10 on CBS, 12-seeded McNeese taking on 4-seeded Purdue. Purdue's favored by 6.5 in this one. I do have a lean in this game. It is McNeese plus 6.5. I think this is a good matchup for them. Purdue, they kind of just ride. They just rode Braden Smith pretty much that entire first round matchup. He's been awesome. McNeese has the defenders. They have the speed. Quadir Copeland is the name to know from McNeese, Syracuse transfer. It's going to be a fun game. I think I like McNeese to cover 6.5 in that one, but wouldn't be surprised if Purdue just, does what Purdue does and just Matt Painter and gets to the Sweet 16. That would be fun. At 8:40 on TNT, this is the game of the night. 8-seeded Gonzaga taking on 1-seeded Houston. Houston favored by 5.5 in this matchup. I do have a lean. I think it's Houston minus 5.5 for this sole reason. The big men down low. Gonzaga gets a lot of scoring down low from Ike, Ben Gregg, and Braden Huff. Houston has the best post defenders in the entire country. JoJo Tugler has a 7'6" wingspan. I imagine he'll be matched up on Graham Ike. Graham Ike relies on that left hook to score most of his points. He's a tremendous player, don't get me wrong, but a left hook looks a little different with the 7'6" wingspan of JoJo Tugler, who blocks everything. Braden Huff or Ben Gregg against Jawan Roberts. Jawan Roberts is just so much more physical. I think for Gonzaga to have a chance, Caleb Battle is going to have to probably pop off for 25 plus. He hasn't had the most awesome year, but we know the talent is there. I expect probably Milos Uzan to be on him. They'll probably throw Terrence Arsenault on him a little bit too, coming off the bench. I lean Houston in the game, but it's tough to go against Mark Few in March Madness. Gonzaga's Sweet 16 streak is on the line. 9 straight Sweet 16s. Now they got to go through the team who looks like they might be the best team in the country. Right now we're top couple in the country for sure. Houston 5.5. I think I like them. I think I would take Houston to win that game. At 9:40 on TBS, 7-seeded UCLA takes on 2-seeded Tennessee. So this is the late night game. Prolific defenses, Mick Cronin, Rick Barnes, great defenders. UCLA looked awesome against Utah State. However, Tennessee is just a different breed. They are bigger. They're more physical. Akpara versus Ade Mara is going to be a fun matchup down low. I like Tennessee's guards so much better than UCLA. I think Tennessee wins the game. Mick Cronin, don't put it past him to win this game, though, for UCLA. I like Tennessee's guards a little bit better, which is why I will lean Tennessee, but I know Mick Cronin's going to have a good game plan. I would lean Tennessee plus the minus 5.5, but we'll see in that one. In the West, at 2:40 on CBS, thank God this is an early game and not a late night game. It's Saturday. Get the great games early. Arkansas versus St. John's, the biggest coaching matchup in a while. John Calipari versus Rick Pitino, the two guys who left Kentucky, matching up in the second round. St. John's favored by 7.5. That's a lot of points for a second round game. Yet I think St. John's just has too much for Arkansas, quite frankly. Arkansas has been really good as of late. I do think St. John's is the best 2-seed in the entire country, above Alabama didn't look great. Tennessee and Michigan State. I think St. John's is the best 2-seed. They're so physical. They've been scoring the ball well as of late. St. John's, I I think is going to win the game. They're just a little too physical and just a little too talented. This team is so good, but 7.5, a lot of points. Don't really have too much of a lean in that one. At 6:10 on TNT, 11-seeded Drake taking on 3-seeded Texas Tech. As mentioned, these two coaches have a relationship. Ben McCullum and Grant McCasland are like reportedly best friends, like close, maybe not best friends in one of the guys' eyes, I guess, but they're really close friends, have a great relationship there. So cool to see them match up. I'm sure Grant McCasland's so happy for Ben McCullum to just pop off like this and become the coach's newest star. Just going a little bit outside the tournament, I will be shocked if Ben McCullum is the coach at Drake next year. I mean, maybe he's happy there. I mean, he's stuck in D2 forever when he could have went D1. Maybe he's just happy at Drake because they obviously have a tremendous thing going over there. But I'd be shocked if he's not making millions of dollars at, probably either Indiana or not Indiana, at Iowa next year is kind of what I'm thinking. Obviously Indiana hired Darren DeVries, so I'm thinking Ben McCollum's going to end up at Iowa, but we'll see. He'll be a popular pick. He's awesome. Texas Tech is favored by 6.5 in this one. Texas Tech looked a little bit iffy in that first round matchup against UNC Wilmington. I think I leaned Drake plus 6.5. In fact, I got him at 7.5 a little bit earlier. I did take that game. I think Drake, they have shown nothing that they're not awesome. So why not take them? Texas Tech looked a little vulnerable. Texas Tech definitely has the talent edge, but Drake they're awesome. I'm taking them. I'm riding them. Tomorrow on Sunday, the rest of the games, starting in the South region, 7:45 on True TV. True TV back in the scenario on Sunday. 6-seeded Ole Miss taking on 3-seeded Iowa State. Iowa State favored by 5.5 in this one. Iowa State looked awesome. Ole Miss also looked great early against North Carolina. I don't have a particular lean in this game. I think I could see it going either way. 5.5 seems like quite a few points, but I've been in on Iowa State all season long, even without Keyshawn Gilbert. This team's really good. That's a great young star coaching matchup. TJ Otzelberger taking on Chris Beard. That's going to be a lot of fun there. At 8:40 on TNT, 10-seeded New Mexico taking on 2-seeded Michigan State. Michigan State favored by 7.5. I think this might be a close game. I will pick Michigan State to win. I will take New Mexico to stay inside that number, though. New Mexico's got just that vibe about them where if you were to see a 10 seed in the Elite Eight, it might be New Mexico. This team is playing really good, but Michigan State has proven nothing but great. So I would take New Mexico to cover, but Michigan State to win. In the Midwest, what might be the most just up and down game of the season. 5:15 on CBS. 6-seeded Illinois taking on 3-seeded Kentucky. Illinois is favored as the 6 seed by 1.5. I like Kentucky in this matchup. Maybe I might take that back. I might stay away from it, but I think if I had to choose, I'd take Kentucky. I believe in that roster a little bit more than Illinois, just from what I've seen throughout the year. But Illinois, there's no doubting they're a good team. Illinois is just so up and down because they've been so unhealthy all year. And when they're healthy, they seem to be really good. However, it is still in the back of my mind that they just got bamboozled by Duke when they were, they were fighting illnesses. But I don't know. That's just for some reason in the back of my mind. I'll probably stay away from it. But I would probably lean Kentucky. But no real take on that one. In the East at 2:40 on CBS. Scott Drew and Baylor take on number 1 Duke and Cooper Flag. Duke is favored by 11.5 in that one. I don't see a way that Baylor wins this game, unfortunately, unless VJ Edgecombe just comes out and is like, hey, maybe I have a case for the number 1 overall pick, which isn't going to happen. It's going to be Cooper Flag. But maybe he's got a little chip on his shoulder and goes for 35 in this one. But I don't think I see it happen in Duke. I fully expect to win that game. St. Mary's, the 7 seed, taking on 2-seeded Alabama, 6:10 on TNT. Both teams struggled in the first round. Bama only favored by 5.5. We talked about this in our preview podcast. If there's a 2 seed that's going to go down, I was kind of looking at this game because St. Mary's and Randy Bennett, we saw it against Vanderbilt, can really slow down the pace. And that can be frustrating to Alabama, who is so run and gun. If they play towards Alabama's pace and it is a fast game, Alabama's going to win. If they slow it down, there is a scenario where I could see St. Mary's taking them down. At 9:40 on TBS, 5-seeded Oregon taking on 4-seeded Arizona. This game will be in Seattle, so it's in the East region, but the game is played in the West. So up towards Oregon, kind of just a basic Pac-12 matchup that we used to see. Arizona's favored by 4.5. Both teams looked awesome in the first round. I think I lean Oregon plus 4.5 because I think this is a close, it's kind of a 50-50 game to me. So if you're giving me 4.5 points, I think I would lean Oregon, but Arizona looks really good as well. We'll see about that one. That's going to be a very, very fun matchup. Then in the West, the first game of the day, which I'm glad to see, 12-10 on CBS, 8-seeded UConn taking on 1-seeded Florida. I think this is where we see that we will not see a 3-time defending champion. I think Florida's going to win. Never count Dan Hurley out in March Madness. He's awesome. Florida is just has a huge talent edge in this game, quite frankly. But if anyone can do it, if anyone can take down a 1 seed, it would probably be Dan Hurley. But I will definitely lean Florida in that game. And then at 7-10 on TBS, 12-seeded Colorado State taking on 4-seeded Maryland. Colorado State is blazing hot. Maryland is favored by 7.5 in this one. Don't have a particular lean in this one. In the second round, I always tend to lean towards the underdog plus the points because they all seem closer to 50-50 to me than the round of 64, but most of the games. Colorado State's just playing so good. I would probably lean plus 7.5, but Maryland has the chance to just blow them out as well. But 7.5 feels like a lot of points. All right, that's it. That's the round of 64 and the round of 32 preview. We got through it pretty quickly, only about 36 minutes here. Before we get out of here, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers. Really appreciate that. Everyone's really just, it's been growing like crazy. People are commenting their takes, which I love. It's not just me. I give my takes, but I love to see other people's takes as well. Maybe you got some hot takes. Maybe you think Arkansas and John Calipari is going to have some magic and take down Rick Pitino. Wouldn't that be something? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to follow us on social media, Instagram and TikTok at Bracket Science. We've obviously been posting there a ton over these last couple days, and it is going to continue. We're not posting every game. We're not going to blow up your timeline. Just whenever the worst seeded team wins is when we've been posting. So other than that, it's not too crazy on there and just blowing up your feed. But so that will do it for the show today. We're going to be back on Monday in 2 days reviewing the round of 32 and previewing the round of, not the round of 16, the Sweet 16. We might even do a live show. In fact, probably will. Not 100% sure yet. Got to see what the schedule entails. So stay tuned for that. Hit that like and subscribe. Turn on the post notifications and follow us on social media. Everyone enjoy the round of 32. May your brackets not get busted further throughout these next couple days. Everyone enjoy it. See you later.